South Africans are not xenophobic. South Africans are not hateful towards other Africans. South Africans are not unwelcoming to other Africans. South Africans will be the same ones having to flee their own country because of situations they foresaw, things that could have been prevented. What happened when they introduced Zimbabwe? They started doing the same thing that the previous regime was doing. They started exploiting the people. They started taking advantage of the people. I know someone is going to say, yes, they were sanctioned. Yes, there was this and that. But the leaders themselves are not innocent in all these things. So even today, you have filthy rich Zimbabweans. And then now you have the poor of the poor in Zimbabwe that are now left with no choice but to do what, cross the border into South Africa. Even recently, they just changed the constitution to fit the same leaders who are not doing anything for the people, who are not doing anything for the country. How do you have the most educated people now not having a solution on how to take back their country? We said Mugabe is the problem. Once Mugabe is no longer there, things are gonna change. Mugabe is no more. Come and say black South Africans are lazy. Black South Africans are not creative enough. So it's kind of ridiculous for us to say we're going to solve the problem of people who are coming to the country, but failing to solve whatever that is pushing them to come into the country. I don't even want to talk about Nigerians, man. There are many. But at the same time, somehow they were supposed to have a good president, but somehow they let some other old nigger there to take over. We have a government that is watching. When are you going to engage these African leaders? And the African leaders came out guns blazing when they started hearing that South Africans are saying foreigners must leave. South Africans are tired. We come back with another opinion, and I hope it will land this time. And yeah, let's dig into it. South Africans are not xenophobic. South Africans are not hateful towards other Africans. South Africans are not unwelcoming to other Africans. South Africans are not hateful towards other Africans on basis of them being from Africa, on basis of them for being in South Africa. It's just that South Africans have had enough of what is currently happening in South Africa. Because if we try to turn a blind eye and do as if we don't see, then fast forward, South Africans will be the same ones having to flee their own country because of situations they foresaw, things that could have been prevented. I mean, if we are to be honest with the situation in Africa and most of the African countries, it's something that was man-made. It's not just something that fell out of the sky. It's something that has been coming, and it's something that the leaders we have elected are part of the problem itself. And for some reason, we end up finding ourselves in a situation where we'll rather run away from the country than stay in the country and fix the problem, because we've allowed the problem to get to a point where, you know, whatever that you think it's pointless. And there's much or less that you can do to solve the problem, because now we've now allowed things to get to a level where the people that we've entrusted with power are exploiting the resources of the country. And somehow they have now captured the entire economy of the country, where even if they don't do anything during their term, for somehow and some reason, they still get to retain power, either by rigging the votes, or I don't know if it's manipulating their own citizens to vote for them, and somehow giving them false hope that this time around we're gonna make things happen. We're gonna bring the change that you've been calling for, the change that you've been crying for. Because typically, let's look at our neighbors, Zimbabwe. The leaders who came in when Mugabe took over, they had good intentions before they got into power. They wanted to liberate the people. They wanted to get rid of Rhodesia and introduce Zimbabwe. And they did that. They introduced Zimbabwe, but what happened when they introduced Zimbabwe? They started doing the same thing that the previous regime was doing. They started exploiting the people. They started taking advantage of the people. Being a liberation movement, instead of liberating the people, and after liberating them, you give them economic freedom. You emancipate them. You build the economy. And I know someone is going to say, yes, they were sanctioned. Yes, there was this and that. But the leaders themselves are not innocent in all these things, because they took advantage of whatever small that was left. Instead of rebuilding Zimbabwe from scratch, trying to build good relationships with the Western countries, the Eastern countries, your Russia, your China, your Japan. Instead, what they did was to look at the situation as a money-grabbing opportunity for them. That's why even today, you have filthy rich Zimbabweans who nobody knows how they got that rich, but it's not like we don't know. We do know how they got it. And they're still benefiting even now. They own mines. They're exploiting whatever small that is there. And then now you have the poor of the poor in Zimbabwe that are now left with no choice but to do what, cross the border into South Africa. So that's how we got to now the Zimbabwe that everybody had high hopes for. The Zimbabwe that was liberated before South Africa. The Zimbabwe that had freedom before South Africa now is in a state where even recently they just changed the constitution to fit the same leaders who are not doing anything for the people, who are not doing anything for the country. How do you give someone an extension of their term in office when you can deliberately and you can see that this person is not doing anything for the country, is not doing anything for the people? But the people that are there, because the few that are eating are able to manipulate the system. And now they've turned the situation into a point where if you're not happy, your only situation is to run away from Zimbabwe. And my biggest problem is, at some point we were told that Zimbabweans are the most educated people in Africa, and not even talk about Southern Africa. I don't want to talk about that. But then how do you have the most educated people now not having a solution on how to take back their country? If you cannot take it by hook, at least use the crook, man. At least beat the system and try from that. Because the problem was, we said Mugabe is the problem. Once Mugabe is no longer there, things are going to change. Mugabe is no more. The people who have taken over from Mugabe are not different from him, because they were friends during the struggle. They were friends even when Mugabe was in power. There are people who enabled him. And now they're seeing an opportunity to keep on exploiting the situation that is there, because our own clever Zimbabweans think it's okay for them to run away from their own country. And even when it's time for them to go and vote, what do? Majority of them say there's nothing that we're going back home for. Who's going to liberate Zimbabwe now? Because ZANU-PF liberated Rhodesia and introduced the new Zimbabwe. But from this new Zimbabwe, we need something else. I'm not sure if they're going to change the name. And whatever name that they come up with, and even if they don't change the name, but they need to come up with a new system that's going to work for Zimbabwe. Because here's the thing, a struggling Zimbabwe is having a lot of consequences on the situation in South Africa, is having some dire effect, some ripple effect on South Africa, the neighbor. And I'm not saying Zimbabweans are a problem in South Africa, and it's not like some Zimbabweans are not problematic in South Africa. But I'm saying if Zimbabwe is not in a good state, there is no way we're going to be able to win this thing that we're saying the problem is the illegal immigration in South Africa, because they're still going to continue coming. You're going to take them back home, and the next day they're back, because they're not willing. They don't have that thing that they're supposed to have, that we need to take the country back from these crooks who are leading us. So, and obviously when they come into South Africa, what happens? They get low-paying jobs. They're okay with that. Imagine working the entire month, knocking in at 5 a.m. in the morning, knocking off at 4 p.m. the entire month. You don't even get a day off and somebody comes and pays you 1,000 rand. That doesn't even pay rent. But because they're staying for free. Somehow I don't even know if they get given food, but they get exploited because they also present themselves as people who are desperate to take whatever that is presented. And then we have some clever blacks who then come and say black South Africans are lazy. Black South Africans are not creative enough. That's why you have foreigners controlling certain major industries like the township industry. It's not like that. You cannot compete with somebody who's willing to take whatever that is there, and because of desperation. So now what has led to this? What brought us to all this thing where now as South Africans we start feeling desperate. We're put to a point of desperation because there are other people who come into the country running away from their countries, who are desperate for whatever small that is there. And we think we can solve the immigration problem by just saying Abraham, but it's not going to work. It's not going to work. And somehow I feel like the government is somehow doing it intentional, because we are supposed to be looked at as the capitalist country. Yes, we're supposed to be looked at as a capitalist country. And what happens in a capitalist country is that there is exploitation. So if the locals don't want to be exploited, what then do? You bring in illegal immigrants who can work for whatever that is there. So the problem in South Africa, it's very big. It's bigger than just saying foreigners are taking our jobs, and it's bigger than just saying Abahambe. Something needs to change. And for the South African government, I feel like they are letting us down because they are failing to hold the Zimbabwean government accountable for this problem that we're having now. I mean, if you're having your people run away from your country, it's not like they're fleeing war where we can say, yeah, there's maybe war that, like whatever that's happening now between Iran and Israel and the US, it's understandable. There's a war. The people cannot control that. And even the government of Iran somehow has to fight back to protect their own borders. But in Zimbabwe, you have the government that is now pushing people out of the country because of they are stealing whatever small that is there. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's very ridiculous. And for the South African government, as much as they can try to engage all these leaders of these marches, it's very pointless if they're not going to go into Zimbabwe and try to remedy the problem that is causing these Africans to run away from their countries and jump the border into South Africa. Because there is hunger there. There's no job opportunity there. And the worst part, they have mineral resources that can be utilized to create jobs, that can be utilized to create other means of income for the people that are in the country. But what happens? Those minerals get shipped out of the country as soon as they are taken outside of the soil. And who benefits? The few that are eating with the government. So it's very pathetic and ridiculous for the government now to say we want to engage these people who are doing the march and marches, the people who are protesting. It's pointless. You need to go into Zimbabwe. You need to fix Zimbabwe. If Zimbabwe is fixed, I mean, one time as South Africans, we would also like to go into Zimbabwe, man. Imagine a South African saying, I want to visit Zimbabwe for a whole month. For what? I just want to visit Zimbabwe, see Zimbabwe, man, experience the life in Zimbabwe. But how do you do that every day when you see people running away from their own country every day? You ask yourself, what is it that they're running away from? There are problems there. And who is responsible for those problems? I hold everybody accountable, but there's a share percentage of who's contributing this much to this. As equally as I hold the government in Zimbabwe, I hold the citizens of Zimbabwe saying that how do you run away from your country and think it's going to be fixed? What do you think is going to happen? We're going to end up with a lot of Zimbabweans who run away from Zimbabwe to South Africa, and then you think that's going to solve anything in Zimbabwe? What kind of example are you living? What kind of example are you living? Because you're supposed to be fighting for your country. In Mozambique, they tried, and the South African government then went and failed the people of Mozambique the same fucking way. And they said no, they won the elections when they know very well that they rigged the elections. And what kind of ripple effect is that going to have in South Africa? You're going to have a lot of Mozambicans running away from Mozambique to South Africa because the country is not stable. There's instability there. The people are eating alone. You know, that's fucked up. And that's something that's supposed to be addressed. It's something that the South African government is supposed to fuckingly man up and say, we are coming into Zimbabwe. If you have to put the country under administration, let it be, man. Because, I mean, fucking motherfucker Trump went to Venezuela and took their president and nobody said anything. Why can't we go there and take Mnangagwa and bring him to South Africa, hold him accountable for the atrocious things that he's doing in that country for motherfucking sake? So it's kind of ridiculous for us to say we're going to solve the problem of people who are coming to the country, but failing to solve whatever that is pushing them to come into the country. I don't even want to talk about Nigerians, man. There are many, but at the same time, somehow they were supposed to have a good president, but somehow they let some other old nigger there to take over. And what is that old nigger doing? It's just a proxy there, man. He's just put in, he's a statue. He cannot even walk, but somehow he's their president. Out of so many Nigerians, you decide to be led by somebody who's in their 80s, 90s. And then somehow you're thinking, okay, I'm living a better life hiding in other countries. That's not a better life, man. You're supposed to be proud of where you come from. You're supposed to say, anytime I can go back home if I want to. But not say, these guys, I can't go back home. This is my country. This is not your country. It's fucked up shit. This is not your country, man. Go back to your country and fix it. And come back into South Africa and say, I'm here to visit. Not here to stay. Not knowing what you're even here to do. Because worse, we end up with the whole drug lord thing, and Nigerians can never be drug lords, man. They're just people who are running on the streets. They are, I don't know what they call them, but they're street runners. They are ice boys when it comes in the drug industry. And why do they allow to be used as that? Is because of fucking exploitation. So the South African government has to do better. This thing of thinking they're gonna sit with Ngizwe and Pakela, what is not gonna solve anything. It's not gonna solve anything. You're just fooling us like what these guys are doing. You're just putting a face as a fucking facade, and it's not supposed to be like that. And I know I wasn't supposed to fucking swear on this video, but this whole thing, how do you then say you're solving the problem of where people are coming from when you're failing to address it? Hold them accountable. You cannot have people jumping the border in Messina, jumping and getting medical facilities, getting medical assistance in South Africa, and you don't even care to go to Zimbabwe and ask, why is this happening? This is affecting us. You're supposed to act on that, but you're not doing that. The Somalians who came here in South Africa and the Ethiopians who are fleeing their countries because of war, you need to go into the country and start thinking, what is the way forward? Is there still the war that makes these people come into South Africa to seek refugee? If there's still a war, then you need to do something to make sure that that country is stable. You need to start holding the peace talks with the leaders of this country and stop sitting down with Ngizwe and saying, this is going to solve anything. It's not going to solve a thing. I get it. You're trying to divide and conquer them. You're trying to do all that so that they can fight amongst themselves and then they stop this. But the problem is bigger than what we think. The problem is bigger than these people just being here. The problem is bigger than us as well, saying they must just leave. Leave and go away. Because the same way they came into the country, they're going to come back. And as the government of South Africa, you're not willing to do anything with your borders. You're hiring corrupt officials there who take 200 rand and allow people into the country. You don't even care what that person is going to do. What if that same person who you're letting into the country with 200 rand is going to do something to your family at the end of the day that they will be untraceable because you couldn't even care to make sure they get into the country in the right way? So we don't have a migration problem. We have an illegal migration problem in South Africa. And we have a problem with the law enforcers who are enabling all this thing. We have a government that is watching. A reactionary government that is saying we will only react, and react by doing what? By engaging the people who are marching, by engaging the leaders of the people who are protesting. When are you going to engage these African leaders? I mean, the African leaders came out guns blazing when they started hearing that South Africans are saying foreigners must leave. But in South Africa, you have the leadership that is quite not listening to its own people, what the people want. What happened to the government being the people, for the people, by the people? Things have changed. The government is for the people who are leading, by the people who are leading, and whatever way the people want. So the South African government need to dig deep, man. This is getting out of control, and it doesn't help. Even if they throw money in front of these guys and they take this money, we're gonna have another movement again that comes back and seeks answers, because South Africans are tired. They are tired.